Today we have the opportunity to sharpen our saw and create something with our hands and learn something new. Today you're going to create a clay mug. So you have a clay slab at your table. This will be just a thin piece of clay that I've rolled out for you so it's even all the way across. Hopefully it is. And then you're going to have a template that will help you cut out the size of the mug that you're going to need. Now if you want something larger than this or smaller than this is just a guide or a starting point. So if you feel like you would like it to make it smaller, feel free to cut it lower than mine, or if you have extra room and you want to maybe make it longer than mine, you can do that as well. So I'm just going to go with the template I've already created. I'm going to cut it out with the stick at my table. I always tell my students to make sure that you use the pointy side to cut and you keep that stick as straight up and down as possible. That way you're not hiding underneath the template. So I always tell my students that clay will not stick to clay on its own. It needs a helper tool, and that helper tool is our toothbrush, which freaks them out, but that's what we need to scratch and attach our clay together. So what you're gonna do is dip your brush in the water, and you're gonna scratch the edge of the clay so that you're creating those teeth marks in the clay. When clay and clay stick together, they shrink a little bit when they dry, so they're gonna pull back apart, but when you're scratching it with that toothbrush, you're creating some cut marks, and then when you create cut marks on the other side, those cut marks will lock together, and that's when you are slipping and scoring your clay. So a little background for you. You can scratch the other side of the clay as well, because we're gonna wrap this up and attach them together. So I've pressed this on, making sure first that it's secure and it could stay by itself. And then I'm gonna marry the two pieces together and get rid of the seam. It's important that we don't have a seam showing, because if this will hold anything liquid, we don't want to have a hole in it. Now that my seam is gone on both the inside and the outside, and it's a solid piece all the way around, I'm ready to use this extra piece of clay. We're gonna create the bottom of your cup, your mug, or your vase, whatever you're deciding that it's going to be. We are going to measure out the area that we're gonna need for that first, just by visualizing. Set it on the bottom, create sort of that cylinder, and then you can remove that piece, because remember, clay won't stick to clay. You might be able to see an impression, and right there where you see the impression is where we're gonna scratch. We always need to scratch, scratch, and attach. After you have scratched and attached, you want to flip it over and press it down into the vase. Then we're going to use our pointed side of the stick again and cut out the extra clay. We want to make sure that that base is still attached and save our extra clay for later. We're going to pick up our clay cup and we're going to marry the sides as well down here at the base. So if your hand is still a little bit wet, you can go ahead and just what I call pet the edges to get rid of the seam. We want to be sure that we're petting on the surface and not trying to dig down into the clay. That's when we can start to thin out the walls, and we don't want to do that. If it feels like your finger's getting stuck and it's just starting to make what I call clay boogers, that also freaks the kids out, you can dip your finger in the water so that it's a little more fluid and easy to move. All right, so if you're that type A person and all the texture and bumps and stuff on here is driving you crazy, it is now your time to get rid of that stuff. If you want to smooth out your mug, you can dip your finger in the water and you can smooth out any of those imperfections that you're not liking. Maybe like mine, you've got a rim that's a little uneven. I'm going to lay this down on the mat with that uneven side down, and I'm going to just cut off what I don't like. But now I've got some work to do on smoothing this out. Okay, so now as the artist, you get to decide how is this mug going to be decorated. Maybe you are the student in the classroom who is just proud of yourself for making a mug and you just want to leave it this way. Totally fine with me. So if you want a smooth texture on your mug and you don't want to add anything else to it, now would be the time when you write your initials on the bottom of the mug or the cup. And if you are the overachiever and you would like to create a handle for your clay mug, I will show you how to do that in the next video. But if you're the in-betweener and you're just ready to add some texture and you're still feeling good and you're ready to go, there's some texture bins at your table. Just explore with these texture bins in here, and I would use the extra clay at your table. You can use any of these tools in any way that you feel or any way you want to experiment with. So some of these things you can press into the clay. I pushed that in a little too hard, so it's pulling some of that out. So you can press into the clay. You can just play with the surface of the clay really gently. You can overlap textures, go 2 different directions. You can keep it really simple or you can get really detailed. This is where you get to be the artist and decide how you're going to decorate your clay, but this is a great place to practice on before you're doing it on your clay mug. If you are ready to move to your clay mug, I would always keep my hand inside the mug wherever I'm adding clay so that I'm not pressing into that clay, I'm just using the surface and I'm not compromising the shape of the mug. I tell my students all the time that if you happen to make a line that you do not like or a mistake that you do not like and you haven't pressed it in too far, you can still rub that out. But if you can't rub it out, just turn it into a beautiful oops and keep doing it so that your audience thinks that you meant to do that on purpose.